The Draugur's Lantern Shield essentially turns any Ignite skill into RF. Whenever you inflict an Ignite, you get this cool green circle around you that deals damage over time equal to a percentage of the Ignite's DPS. And it procs with every new Ignite, so you can keep it up pretty much indefinitely in maps. Now the cool thing is, it works with Ignites from any source, which means explosions, as long as the Ignite will keep refreshing it. And Chieftain's explosions do a shit ton of damage, so the green RF circle will be strong enough to kill trash mobs on its own, which will proc explosions that ignite and proliferate, causing a huge explosion chain that clears your screen and refreshes the Draugurflame so you can mostly just run around like an Autobomber. That means this build is a really good juice mapper. It might not seem like it from the footage, but this is a really high density map. It just kinda looks empty because the explosions are off-screening everything, and the Ignite prolif they leave behind kills anything that spawns in, so this build really excels at stuff like Breach, Beyond, Eldritch Altars, Harvest even. The main idea here is to use a skill that's really hard hitting with the trade-off that it's kinda awkward to use for mapping, and let the shield and explosions carry in that aspect. I thought Bodyswap of Sacrifice would be a pretty good candidate for this, even though it does have a 50% less damage multiplier for Ignite, and it did get ultra nerfed with the companionship change. It still does a lot of damage, and I kinda wanted to play Bodyswap, so yeah. Generally speaking, Ignite kinda runs out of ways to scale damage, at least at the high end, so the really high damaging Ignite skills usually tend to be able to leverage some other scaling vector. In this build, we get to scale minion life for damage. So the way Bodyswap of Sacrifice works is you sacrifice a minion, it explodes, and the explosion does damage equal to a pretty significant percentage of its life. We use a Dark Marionette Spectre because it revives itself. It's one of the special corpses you get from Ritual, but you can just buy them from people. And by the way, the corpse level doesn't matter on these. Spectre levels are tied to the skill gems, so I don't know why level 85s are sometimes randomly so much more expensive. Now, we care about the Spectre level because its base life goes up, so we want to jack up the level on the Spectre as much as possible. To do that, we use Empower and Eclipse in something that gives added levels, and to be honest, I definitely overcooked here. I saw this double corrupted Cloak of Flame for sale, and I just went ahead and built around it. With a +2 minion helmet, we get a level 32 Spectre gem. However, since we're using our 6 link for our Spectres, we need a multi-link helmet for our Bodyswap, so I ended up recalming this thing. But the thing is, you can get the same effect with a +2 minion corrupted Honor Home, which is like 5C, and then you don't need the double corrupt on the Cloak of Flame either, which opens you up for a cool vestigial implicit. But it is what it is. The helmet does have life on it, and 30% LE damage is a bit better than the next best support gem. And with more links I can use Companionship, which after the nerf doesn't give more minion life anymore, so it's not even that insane. And since we're exploding our guy, there's a bit of downtime on it, but it does give some survivability while mapping. However, that means I only run one Spectre, so very occasionally I end up having to wait like a second or two for my guy to respawn. With Honor Home, you don't have to worry about that since you can run 3 Spectres, and you can get a +2 to all socketed gems on the Honor Home from a transformed Glimpse of Chaos. That would give us a level 34 Spectre gem, so yeah, in retrospect, I should have just used an Honor Home. Now that we have a high level Spectre, we stack a bunch of increased minion life. One really big source of this comes from an Elegant Hubris, which can give a bunch of 80% minion life notables. The one I'm using only has 2 of them on it, but it also has block and endurance charge gain. There are other jewels with 4 minion life notables on them, which translates to about 30% more damage in my setup. It's pretty significant versus like Ubers, but for mapping I prefer the endurance charges. This one specifically is really good. It has 320% minion life and block on it. It's just missing the endurance charges. And of course the passive tree is gonna look different here depending on what you have on your Elegant Hubris. This might not even be the best location to put it, but yeah, you can just use the Timeless Jewel tool on PoE to find one. Oh, and make sure you get Caspero on it for Supreme Ostentation. It lets us actually use Eclipse support, which has crazy attribute requirements. And also, we can tattoo up our entire tree. Every int node gets turned into 5% minion life. We're using some Fire Res tattoos to cap block with a Thalborn Red Nightmare, and we have a couple Ignite Chance tattoos to reach 100% in conjunction with this Mage Blood Enhanced Flask suffix. Without Mage Blood, you'll need to use more Ignite Chance tattoos, and probably a medium cluster or 2. Maybe even use Combustion in your main links in really budget setups. Alternatively, you can use a weapon with Ignite Chance on it, but when you start getting close to 90% max res, Nebulous becomes really good. I actually did some testing with like really scuffed gear, and it felt fine in T16s and regular pinnacles. The Chieftain explosions with Nebulous really do a lot of heavy lifting. And when I say scuffed, I mean like 1 stat jewels for just max fire res, Ngamahu's sign for 10% ignite chance just to save money on ignite tattoos, and a random uncatalyzed, like poorly rolled Defiance of Destiny for some recovery. Now, this isn't like an optimized budget setup or anything like that, just a quick and dirty test to see how it plays without gear. Okay, so scaling damage is pretty simple. In addition to the minion life stuff, you just do your usual ignite things. Increased damage is pretty easy to come by with things like Nebulous and Adrenaline from these boots. This ring here is huge for damage. It's got minion life, increased fire damage, and most importantly a sizable amount of dot multi, which is kinda hard to get a lot of in this build, so try to go for it anywhere you can. Faster Ignite is also another huge scaler. It lets you, in a sense, cash in on the ignite duration you get from Cloak of Flame and Unbound Ailments. Too much of it is bad though, the build feels really scuffed when your ignites are too short. Like the prolif doesn't last long enough to kill things that spawn in, and having to recast too often on bosses gets a little bit awkward. That's why I anointed Breath of Flames even though Searing Heat is more damage. For defenses, we start with the classic Chieftain package, scaling max fire res. Cloak of Flame and Foulborn Zoth's Heart convert a large portion of incoming fizz damage to elemental, and then we have armor for the rest of it. We get 75-72 block, and even though we can't use a recover on block shield, we have enough recovery just from regen. Defiance of Destiny is another great defensive option, but I didn't feel like I needed the recovery, and automating Covered in Ash is also really nice. Now, Mageblood is one of those things that the presence of can really change how you build around your defenses. A juiced up Ruby Flask is like Purity of Fire, but better. The max res frees up jewel sockets, and the fire res combined with a well-rolled Cloak of Flame means we don't have to worry about getting Ellie res on gear, freeing up suffixes for more damage. The regen flask suffix accounts for almost half of our regen, and a granite flask allows us to actually scale armor even though we only have any significant amount of armor on gloves. Without Mageblood, I wouldn't even bother with the armor thing. Instead of Determination, you can go Flesh and Stone, Arctic Armor, or even Purity of Fire, and for your guard skill, you can go Immortal Call. The playstyle, for the most part, is really comfy. You might be worried about having to locate your spectre, or even worse, wait for it to catch up to you, mouse over it, and then explode it with Bodyswap, but rest assured, you don't have to do any of that shit. You just need to use Convocation to pull the spectre to you instantly, and then press Bodyswap with your cursor anywhere near your character. It'll generally auto-target your spectre, and while technically it's 2 buttons, it's not like you need to spam it or anything, you're just running around like RF most of the time anyway. And most importantly, Convocation's an instant cast, so it doesn't have the usual 2-button feel. For super tanky things that don't instantly die to explosions, you just hit him with your Convocation Bodyswap combo and then stand still for a bit to make use of Ramako's Sun's Light. Maybe even throw in a Flame Surge if you want. Now for bosses, having to stand still there is kind of awkward, in the sense that you're not tanky enough to fully face tank Ubers, so you lose out on some damage whenever you have to move out of the way for a slam or something. But this is predominantly a mapping build, so it's like, whatever. At the high end, it has the damage to kill Ubers pretty easily, but where it really shines is super high density juice maps. And by the way, you'll see that I have Headhunter buffs throughout the mapping footage. I'm using a Foulborn inspired learning mostly just for fun. We don't make great use out of most of the buffs, but for only 1 jewel socket, it's pretty nice for the extra speed you get every now and then.